When you're using Python or any programming language, you will quickly come to understand that Python expects things to come in a certain way. You saw me make a mistake last time, right? I tried to type in the concatenation of two strings and I left off the trailing quote, right? If you did this to a person, they would probably understand what you had in mind. But in Python, you get an error. And in particular, it is called a syntax error because we are not following the rules of syntax that Python requires. Syntax is just a fancy word that means the specific sequence of characters that are allowed in Python to specify a command or something that you can do in Python. And one of the specific requirements, the syntactical requirements of Python, is that if you have an opening quote, you must have a closing quote. You're just not allowed to do that, and so we get an error. The error is a little bit tricky looking, so let's look at it. We see a number of things here. We can ignore some of this stuff. This says file std in, that stands for standard in line 1. That just means that it is processing input from the terminal, from the command line. It shows the line that had the problem, and it nicely points to the place in that line that had the problem. It sees that there was a problem here at the end because it was expecting an end quote and didn't get one. And then it says what the error is. It was a syntax error, and this was the specific syntax problem that we had, which is that there was an EOL, an end of line, while scanning a string literal. A string literal is a string, so it ran into an end of line while it was expecting a quote. Let's try another one. You saw me do concatenations before, right? We can do things like Ben plus Betterson with quotes, and it works fine. Or we can do things like 5 plus 7. Let's set up some variables. Set my name equal to Ben, and say that I have $10. So my money is equal to 10. And I want to print out a line that has my name with how much money I have. So I might try and simply say name plus money and see if that concatenation works. We've seen it work with numbers. We've seen it work with strings. So does it work when you combine a string with a number? And the answer is no. We have a syntax error. It's not allowed. Actually, I take it back. This is a different kind of error. This is a type error. The syntax is actually correct. Right? We're just using an operator with two variables, which is allowed. The type error says that we cannot concatenate an str, which is a string, and an int, which is an integer. In other words, we have two values and they're different types. We talked about data types earlier. So how do we do this? How do we solve this? Well, it turns out in Python you can convert a value from one type to another type, or at least some conversions. In particular, if we want to convert a number to a string, we can do that with this function called str. We haven't learned about functions yet, but you give it a you call this function with parentheses, and you type in the thing that you want to get passed into that function inside the parentheses. So if I type in my money, which will have the value 10, it's an integer, that will get converted to a string. It gets evaluated and displayed, and you can tell that Python sees that it's a string because it prints it with quotes. So now if I say name plus str of money, it works. I get Ben 10. I can make it prettier by saying name plus my name, so that will say NAME colon space followed by my name, followed by another string, which is my money. And now, this is all strings so far, so concatenating those are just fine. And now I want to put in my actual money, and that works. My name is Ben, and my money is 10. If we want to investigate a little bit more, we can find out the types of things in Python with the type function. We can say type of name, and we'll see it is of type string. We can say type of money, and it is of type int. And if we want to see the type of the result of calling str on money, this will be type string, and that's why the concatenation works. And so what we have seen here is a little bit about the syntax and different kinds of expectations of Python. We've seen syntax errors and type errors, a little bit how to interpret them and how to avoid them. I want to say a little bit more about Python, which is the kinds of things that we have been typing in so far, the kinds of commands. Well, we have had expressions, right? Those are mathematical expressions. They get evaluated into a value. And we have seen assignments. When we have a variable, like the letter A, and we assign to it an expression on the right. We can say A equals 5 plus 2. And so the way that Python interprets this expression is it has a left-hand side, which is the variable A that gets assigned to, an equal sign, and then a right-hand side. And the right-hand side gets evaluated first as a whole, and then gets assigned to the thing on the left. So that is an assignment statement. We've seen a little bit of functions like str and type. And we've seen implicitly that Python is line-based, right? Everything I've typed in so far is one line. And in fact, when I've tried to, we haven't even had the opportunity to type things on multiple lines, right? If I wanted to type in a string across 2 lines, like maybe I wanted to press return and then put the following quote on the next line, I can't do that because Python expects everything to be on one line. Pretty soon we're going to see how we can in fact go beyond one line, but for now everything so far is one line.